Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the B segment of episode 58 of Codename Kids Next Door, Operation Outbreak. We begin this segment with the blubber, a combination of a base on top of a whale essentially, heading towards the underwater Kids Next Door Treehouse that we saw in this segment's sibling segment, Operation Virus. Two 2x4 technology vehicles emerge from the blubber and they enter the underwater treehouse. 4 of the 5 Sector V operatives emerge from the vehicles, 2 operatives per vehicle, and we see that they're all wearing scuba outfits. Number 1 is the only Sector V operative who isn't in the underwater treehouse right now, but we do hear from him when number 5 contacts number 1 to let him know that they've entered the underwater treehouse. Number 4 takes off his helmet, and he complains about the swimming that they did not too long ago. Number 5 brings up that they mentioned earlier that this mission would relate to the deep sea in some way, and number 4 admits that he misheard them. He thought they were talking about a seafood barbecue. Over the communicator, number 1 reminds number 4 to put his helmet back on because apparently the underwater treehouse is contaminated right now. We then see that number 1 is in the main control room of the blubber, and he's with number 74.239 and number 20,000. Number 74.239 takes over talking through the communicator, and he tells the 4 other Sector V operatives that this contamination is called Coogitisnal, Octo-Oogie, Tetra-Infecto, Epi-Stractococcus. Yes, that's what number 74.239 calls it. And after a brief argument between number 4 and number 74.239, number 1 takes over talking through the communicator again. And number 1 mentions that the underwater treehouse became contaminated because of Cree's actions in Operation Virus. When Cree used her laser ray gun on the chamber in Operation Virus, this allowed someone who was given the codename Patient C to roam about the underwater treehouse, and apparently Patient C is the one responsible for contaminating the underwater treehouse. So the 4 other Sector V operatives' mission is to find and contain Patient C so that the Kids Next Door scientists can return to the lab in the underwater treehouse. And number 74.239 takes over talking through the communicator again, and he warns them that they need to keep their suits on at all times because he says that they will become contaminated if Patient C touches them when they're not wearing their suits, and they could contaminate anyone else that they touch if Patient C touched them without their suits. Number 20,000 says that he thinks that this is enough reason for why they should just destroy the underwater treehouse. Number 20,000 thinks that if they destroy the underwater treehouse right now, then they won't have to worry about this contamination spreading any further. But yes, that's right. Number 74.239 counters, however, that if the underwater treehouse is destroyed, then the research of the Kids Next Door scientists will be sent back quite some time. Or yes, he gives an exaggerated number of years of how far back their research will go without the lab, but the bottom line is the lab in the underwater treehouse is important, so they can't just destroy the underwater treehouse. Number 1 assures number 20,000 that his teammates will be able to complete this mission without destroying the lab. So number 1 takes over talking through the communicator again, and number 1 instructs his teammates to activate the hazmat mode of their suits, which they do, and he wishes them the best of luck with this mission. So, so the 4 Sector V operatives in the underwater treehouse, they decide to split up into groups of 2. So number 3 and number 5 are going to investigate the upper levels of the underwater treehouse, while number 2 and number 4 will investigate the lower levels of the underwater treehouse. And yes, back on the blubber, number 20,000 still voices his sentiments that they should just destroy the underwater treehouse right now. But number 1 once again assures number 20,000 that the 4 other Sector V operatives will be able to complete this mission without compromising the lab in the treehouse. So the next scene shows us one of the lower levels of the underwater treehouse, and we see that number 2 and number 4 are going down a hallway. Number 4 finds a vending machine, and he tries to get some candy bars in the vending machine. And then he grumbles about how the Kids Next Door scientists were able to figure out how to create a treehouse underwater, but not a vending machine that doesn't require quarters. Number 2, however, says that he thinks they can wait to eat until after they finish the mission, because number 2 admits he doesn't want to be here any longer than they need to be. So number 2 continues to walk further down the hallway, while number 4 still tries to get some candy bars from the vending machine. Number 4 then notices, however, that there's another vending machine that's broken. Yes, the glass in the front of this vending machine is broken, so number 4 takes this chance to try and take the candy bars from this broken vending machine. And number 4 notices that one of the candy bars, or one of the types of candy bars in this broken vending machine, is a coconut bar. That's what it's called. And number 4 is pleased to see that coconut bars are in this particular vending machine. So number 4 takes off his helmet, and he starts to eat the coconut bar. But then suddenly, number 4 notices that someone else is in this hallway. We see a girl, and she greets number 4 with a cheerful yet unsettling hello. And number 4 is startled for a moment, but then he inquires what this girl is doing in the underwater treehouse right now. He brings up about how this treehouse is apparently contaminated right now. The girl's response is to giggle, and she says that number 4 is funny. And number 4, in a nervous manner, number 4 thanks the girl for the compliment, but admits that the girl is creeping him out. And the girl then inquires if number 4 will be her boyfriend. Number 4 nervously tries to back away, or he's facing the girl and he's trying to back away, and he's trying to explain to her that he and his teammates are on a mission to find patient C. Number 4 turns his back to the girl to see where number 2 is, and then number 4 realizes the girl must be patient C. So when number 4 turns around again, patient C is much closer to him than she was a little while ago, and then patient C walks closer to number 4. Back on the blubber, number 1, number 74.239, and number 20,000 notice one of the vehicles returning back to the blubber. They receive a video call from number 2, who says that there's an emergency going on with number 4. And we see number 4, and number 4 has very swollen lips, and it's in an exaggerated manner. Yes, the swollen lips are exaggerated to the point where we, the viewers, can't see number 4's face. Yes, his lips are so swollen that they're covering his face. Yeah, that's the best way I can think to describe the situation. So, yes, number two is letting them know this, and number two shows them number four with the exaggeratedly swollen lips. Yes, number 74.239 and number 20,000 take number four's current condition. Yes, yes, they believe that number four has been contaminated by patient C. That's the conclusion they come to. And number one though is still determined to help number four out. And number 74.239 admits that there is a possibility that they might be able to cure number four, although number 20,000 is hesitant to allow number four back onto the blubber because he thinks the contamination will spread. But number one thinks that they should take that risk if it means helping to cure number four of this apparent contamination. So number one does open the hatch to the blubber so that number two and number four can make it inside the blubber. So several other Kids Next Door operatives bring number two and number four out of their vehicle, and then they start to vigorously clean the vehicle. And then one of the Kids Next Door operatives takes off the hazmat helmet that he was wearing, and then we see that patient C is also on the vehicle right now. Number 20,000 thinks that this is a bad idea, and then we receive a video call from a different part. Yes, the characters in the main control room of the blubber receive a video call from some of the Kids Next Door scientists in a different part of the blubber, and the scientists are trying to warn them that patient C is on the blubber now. Yes, patient C is on the blubber right now, and some of the Kids Next Door scientists are running around panicking, saying that patient C touched them. And this convinces number 20,000 that they need to stop the contamination from spreading any further. Number 20,000 thinks that they should actually crash the blubber into the underwater treehouse so that they'll both go down the trench, essentially. That's along the lines of how he describes what they should do. But number one says that there's a lot of innocent lives, not just on the blubber, but still in the underwater treehouse. Yes, number 3 and number 5 are still in the underwater treehouse. Number 1, number 2, number 4, the Kids Next Door scientists, and number 20,000 himself are all on the blubber, so a lot of innocent lives are in danger if they go with number 20,000's plan. Number 20,000 then says that he now realizes that he was quick to resort to extreme measures, and he tries to apologize. And he says that he'll make it up to number 1 and number 74.239 by getting them some sodas in the mess hall. So number 1 and number 74.239 like the sound of that. But when they exit the main control room, the door closes and it won't open again. Number 20,000 was trying to trick them to get them to leave so that he can set his plan into motion. So yes, number 20,000 takes control of the blubber, and he is planning to charge it into the underwater treehouse. Number 1 tries to contact number 3 and number 5. Yes, he's trying to contact them, and back in the underwater treehouse, we see number 5 and number 3 have arrived at one of the lower levels. They're actually in the hallway that number 2 and number 4 were in when number 4 met patient C. So number 3, number 5 is complaining about the vending machines, but number 3 took some candy bars from the broken vending machine and points them out to number 5. Number 1 then manages to contact number 5 and number 3, and he warns them about number 20,000's plan to crash the blubber into the underwater treehouse. And number 1 insists that number 3 and number 5 still have time to escape. He thinks it's too late for them on the blubber. But number 5 thinks that there might be a plan to save everyone on the blubber too. So number 5 and number 3 are preparing to set this plan up. And number 1 keeps trying to bang on the door of the into the main control room. Number 74.239 complains to number 1. Yes, number 74.239 complains about this method because he says that banging on the door and yelling isn't going to open it up any quicker. But then number 74.239 and number 1 see patient C in the same hallway that they're in right now. And number 74.239 begins to panic, and he starts to bang on the door and yell like number 1 is. And then patient C sees number 4 walking down this hallway, and number 4 still has the very exaggerated swollen lips. So patient C becomes, patient C panics when she sees number 4 with his exaggerated swollen lips, and she actually joins in on yelling and banging on the door like number 1 and number 74.239 are. And eventually, their banging actually does manage to break the door down. And so number 1 wastes no time in rushing to the control part that number 20,000 is at, and he tries to fight number 20,000 for control over the blubber. But the blubber is getting closer to the underwater treehouse. But we see number 5 and number 3 are in their vehicle again, and they charge into the blubber. Their vehicle crashes through the window of the main control room for the blubber, and this causes the blubber to just barely miss the underwater treehouse. Like, here's the underwater treehouse, here's the blubber. It grazes past the top of it, and the underwater treehouse bends back, but then springs back into position. So no one is injured after what number 20,000 tried to pull. He didn't succeed in his plan. So number 5 and number 3 try to get number 20,000 to they try to get him to calm down, to quit trying his extreme methods. And then number 2 and some of the other Kids Next Door scientists enter the room to warn them about patient C, but then they see patient C is already in the room, and number 74.239 panics, and he reiterates that patient C has Coogitisnal, Octo-Oogie, Tetra-Infecto, Epi-Stractococcus. And number 5 questions what that contamination is exactly. And number 74.239 bluntly says that patient C has cooties. And number 5 is baffled by this. Number 5 insists that there's no such thing as cooties. One of the Kids Next Door scientists questions what about number 4 and his exaggerated swollen lips. And number 5 responds that number 4 is allergic to coconuts. Yes, number 4 is allergic to coconuts, including coconut bars, and she says that the swollen lips are a result of number 4 being too stupid to remember that he's allergic to coconuts. And number 4 starts to eat another coconut bar, and number 5 slaps it out of number 4's hand, saying, why would he... She essentially says something along the lines about why would he be eating coconut bars when he was just reminded that he's allergic of them. But the Kids Next Door scientists panic when number 5 slapped the coconut bar out of number 4's hand. They think that number 5 has cooties now, and they make a run for it. Number 20,000 has calmed down now, and he admits that he wouldn't have gone through with his plan if he realized that this whole situation was about something ridiculous like cooties. Number 1 accepts number 20,000's apology, and he admits he can respect number 20,000's dedication to the Kids Next Door organization to the point where he put the organization's well-being over his own. Number 5 admits that she can understand that too, even if the methods were a bit extreme, and then she offers her hand to show no hard feelings. But number 20,000 becomes nervous, and he he says he needs to go check on something elsewhere, and then he leaves. And number 5 thinks, or yes, number 5, at first she's baffled by this, but then she realizes that number 20,000 thinks that she has cooties, and then she can't believe this, but number 1 gets nervous and he jumps back a little when number 5's hand gets close to him, and number 5 is baffled that number 1 thinks she has cooties. Number 1's response is along the lines about how you can't be too careful about these sort of things, and he leaves. And number 5 is baffled by this and frustrated by this. But then number 3 moves away when number 5's hand gets close to her, and number 3 says that she doesn't want to get the cooties either, much to number 5's frustration. At some later point in time, this is during the end credits scene, we see Patient C is going around cheerfully talking to the other to some Kids Next Door operatives. She's inquiring them about if they want to play or if they'd be her boyfriend or something, or things like that. But they're all panicking because they think she has cooties. And she touches one of the Kids Next Door operatives, who begins to panic. But number 74.239 calms that Kids Next Door operative down, because he says that that operative is the brother of Patient C, and he says that siblings or someone can't catch cooties from their sibling. The Kids Next Door operative is grateful, but when he touches number 74.239, number 74.239 begins to panic because he thinks he has cooties now, and that's how we end this segment. So there you go. This was the B segment for episode 58. And I did mention this in the recap and thoughts video for this segment, sibling segment, Operation Virus. But in one of his blog posts, Tom Warburton did mention how Operation Virus and Operation Outbreak stood out because they were sibling segments that still had some connection between them, or there was some serialized element between these two segments in the same episode. While Codename Kids Next Door is known to have serialized elements to it, and storylines that span throughout a season, and some storylines that span through multiple seasons, and sometimes events from an earlier entry will carry over into a later entry. Episode 58 is unique because both segments have some serialized elements between each other, but still being fairly episodic, in the sense that you could watch each segment by themselves without any issue, but you definitely get more out of the experience if you watch them both together. Yes, that's essentially what Tom Warburton mentioned on one of his blog posts. And yes, we did mention this before. The connection has to do with Cree's actions in Operation Virus. So Cree doesn't appear in this segment. She doesn't appear in Operation Outbreak, but her actions from Operation Virus were still what led to the events of Operation Outbreak happening. So once again, in the context of Operation Outbreak, you could say that Cree was an example of small role, big impact because of her actions in Operation Virus. And we do get to see, by the end of the segment, this actually relates to Codename Kids Next Door's usual tendency to take mundane situations and bring them to, or present them in an over-the-top manner. But they do play with it a little in this particular segment. Yes, the situation in question is cooties. Yes, I'm sure many, if not, I'm sure that at least some people have had that experience in life when they were kids, about that whole phase about how boys or girls didn't want to touch each other because they thought the other had cooties. Yes, in this segment, Patient C was a girl that Kids Next Door scientists thought had cooties, but I do remember when I was in elementary school, I do remember there were some some female classmates of mine that thought boys had cooties. So it does happen both ways. I do remember that. Yes, it did bring that to mind. I do remember when I was in elementary school, I do remember some classmates of mine, boys and girls alike, that were going through that phase where they thought the other gender had cooties. Myself, I can't say that was the case for me. Yes, I didn't really go into that whole cootie phase, or I wasn't one of them. I just remember noticing it when I was in elementary school, and I just thought it was more amusing than anything else. But yes, and that's true in real life too. I'm sure that there are other people in real life who never really had that cooties phase. Yes, but I'm sure they probably have met someone who went through that cooties phase, even if they themselves may not have had that cooties phase. Like myself, I didn't go through the cooties phase, but I do remember seeing it a lot when I was in elementary school. And yes, and the twist with this over-the-top manner is that cooties really are harmless in this in this segment. Cooties are presented in the same way that they would be in real life. It's more that the kids actually do believe in the cooties, and that's actually what's pretty funny. Or yes, that's what I thought was funny about this segment. We're led to believe cooties being made into an over-the-top manner, or being presented in an over-the-top manner, which is the norm for Codename Kids Next Door to do with mundane situations. But then we find out, no, cooties are pretty much the same like they are in real life. It's just that the other characters believe that the cooties are dangerous, and the way they're acting is presented in an over-the-top manner. And I thought that was pretty amusing. And the over-the-top manner was more how they acted. Like, they acted like cooties was some great contamination that needed to be contained. And that's what I thought was amusing. They did what Codename Kids Next Door is known for, mundane situations being presented in an over-the-top manner, but they played around with it. They put a twist on it, where this mundane situation really was a mundane situation still in the context of the show's universe. It was just presented in an over-the-top manner because of the kids believing it, like how kids in real life might have that cooties phase, but the Kids Next Door operatives took it to a over-the-top manner. So yeah, that's what I thought was amusing about this segment. Yes, we also, and although to be fair, going along with this twist though, we do get a red herring with the way number 4, we get a red herring with the way number 4 has the swollen lips. Some people, the way his lips were swollen would make someone think, oh, this must be the cooties being presented in an over-the-top manner in the show, or in the universe of Codename Kids Next Door. And then we get the twist that number 4's exaggerated swollen lips was because he's allergic to coconuts, and he forgot that he was allergic to coconuts. So yes, some fans felt that this would be another example of number 4 being exaggerated into the dumb muscle of Sector V. But yes, some people did definitely admit that they did fall for that red herring. So the twist really surprised them when they first watched this segment. And I do agree. I was definitely surprised. I fell for the red herring when I first watched it. And the twist did surprise me back when I first watched this segment, back when it first premiered. And we do get to see, or that's right, we also get to see number 20,000 in a more prevalent role. We did see him in the previous segment, the sibling segment, Operation Virus, but this segment gave us a better understanding of his character. And yes, you could say number 20,000 could be considered a heroic example of the well-intentioned extremist. He wanted to stop this contamination from spreading, but you could definitely say his methods were quite extreme. Although number 1 and number 5 did acknowledge that while his methods were extreme, they could at least understand where he was coming from, even if they didn't agree with his methods. And they they could understand and respect that he was very dedicated to the well-being of the organization. So yes, number 20,000 was a good example of a heroic example of a well-intentioned extremist. He did have, yes, he had a benevolent goal in mind, but he took things too far. But he's still considered on the hero side. He's not considered a Type 3 anti-villain. He wasn't really considered an outright antagonist. And that was also, the interesting detail about this segment. There wasn't really any villains, and there wasn't really even any antagonists, you could say. Or I guess if you're charitable, there isn't really any antagonists. Like, if you don't count number 20,000's extreme methods, and Patient C, like we found out, really, Patient C was harmless too. She wasn't antagonistic in any way. She seemed to be unaware of the fact that everyone else thought she had cooties, or most other Kids Next Door operatives, I should clarify. So this was definitely an interesting segment to have no real villains, and I guess you could argue no real antagonists, depending on how charitable or generous you want to be about number 20,000's methods. But yeah, that was a bit to talk about. But I did think, like I said with the Operation Virus recap and thoughts video, I did think it was pretty interesting how we had two sibling segments that were still connected in some way, but they were still mostly episodic. I thought that was an interesting detail, and that's why, for this show, I thought that was an interesting detail for the show, and it definitely stood out to me it definitely made episode 58 stand out to me back when I first watched the series, and when I'm rewatching it now now at this time as of the recording of this video. But otherwise, yes, there we go for now. So as of this video, we've now discussed the B segment of episode 58 of Codename Kids Next Door on this channel. Take care, and until next time,